Hello everyone again. Jax West from Justice with Jax and Stephen Avery Project and MaM Gossip. No relation to Stephen Avery. I'm just a supporter. We have been going over the Netflix series Making a Murderer. We finished part 1 last week. This week we've been doing 2 episodes a day from part 2. Today we are on episodes 5 and 6. I cannot show you video because Carla tries to get me in trouble. And hello, Bryce. So we can only listen to the audio. Today I've been lazy and hello, Kimber. I'm just sitting on my couch as opposed to I push this table up closer to my TV and then have an office chair that I sit at trying to, sit better while I'm doing this and didn't feel like doing that today. So you'll have to let me know. Hello, Haley. You'll have to let me know how loud I have to make my TV since I'm farther away from the speaker today. 5 and 6. Then tomorrow is 7 and 8. And then on Friday we'll do 9 and 10. And then we will be finished with Making a Murderer. On Monday at this time I will be on Justice with Jax. And we'll play the 2020 episode, hello David, that will be on this Friday night. And then it goes on Saturday, it will be on Hulu. And that is on the Riley Fox case. That the dad, Kevin Fox, was forced into a false confession. He was found guilty of murdering his daughter, Sup Cat, and Kathleen Zellner got him free. Now, but this wasn't a case that took a long time. I believe she got him out within a year. I've seen there's other shows that have covered that case before. But I don't remember all the details. So on Monday, I'll keep it on my DVR. I will have watched it through the weekend. But then on Monday, we'll play it again and talk through that. And then I think the next week we'll do Dream Killer, another one of Kathleen's clients, the Ryan Ferguson case. We've done that before, but we'll do it again. And then I'll close out with Kathleen's clients with Melissa Kaluzinski, who is the one that I know personally. So that's what's on I'm planning on so far. But when I'm doing the other cases, those will be on the Justice with Jax page, not here in MaM Gossip. But Christopher, one of the moderators, he makes all of our Facebook events, and he'll share it in here and remind you all about it, that it'll be over on Justice with Jax. Another thing I want to remind you of, Christopher had made a post today that made me realize that July isn't that far away, since we're in May now. So we do have at the end of July, we're going to do another rally at Waupun Correctional where Stephen is. We had our first one last year. We're going to do it again. So Christopher has an event that's made for that. Good evening, Natalie. I haven't even started it, Natalie. I just have it waiting for me to hit play on it. So there's a Facebook event for that rally that is on the Stephen Avery Project public page. So, and Christopher shares the link all the time. So I always suggest RSVPing yes if you want to make sure that it's like in your events and you can get reminders of it. And still working on what hotel, and there goes my screensaver in Netflix because I'm talking too much. We'll be posting once we have the details set on what hotel people could stay at I mean, you can stay anywhere and, get an Airbnb or whatever you would like to do. Hi, Deanna. But last year I booked a hotel that everybody was in one block that wanted to stay in a hotel for the weekend. And then we would meet for dinner, and we did some Facebook Lives, and, and then we also socialized privately off camera. So, and Christopher is the one that's working on all of those details. So if you want to help in any way in organizing the Waupun rally, that is the last Saturday in July, reach out to our moderator, Christopher, since he's putting everything together, and talk with him. And the last thing I'll say before I hit play, and then I'll say it again at the end of this. I forgot about the movie in the parking lot, Bryce. That was so funny. Last year for the rally, obviously it was COVID, and so somebody had a blow-up movie screen, which I have one of those too. And so right outside of my hotel window in the parking lot there was the big blow-up movie screen that people were there trying to watch something, but then they couldn't figure it out and ended up not watching it, I don't think, anything fully. So it is right now 1:06 p.m. Kayla, who has, however you want to call it, she served Stephen with some harassment thing and wants a temporary restraining order or whatever the frick. That is scheduled for 3:30 p.m. my time, because they're also in the central time zone there in Wisconsin. So it's a little after 1 now. So about the time that we're done with this, court should be starting. And as soon as we know what happens with that, we'll get that posted. Or if you find it before we find it, you can share it or message it to us, whatever you want to do. So we can get that posted. I may go live to discuss it or rant about it, but I have a phone call at 4 o'clock scheduled today, so I don't know for sure. So I'll have to just play it by ear. There. So, and I'll remind everybody when we're done with all of this, these 2 episodes today, about the Kayla thing. And let me hit play now. Well, first, okay, so I'm on the continue watching page. So now I'm clicking on Netflix or on the Making a Murderer. And now I'm going to hit play. Ready, Natalie? I'm hitting play in 3, 2, and now it started going itself. I hate when it does that I don't hit play and it just goes. They're opening the vial of blood.
I inherited this defense theory that Stephen Avery's blood in the RAV had come from the 1996 blood vial. So I started focusing on the viability of that theory and if I wanted to continue with it.
We added one more experiment.
At trial, the defense got totally sandbagged on it because the state tested for EDTA and refuted the arguments that the defense had made to the jury.
It's my opinion that the blood stains that were collected from the RAV4 could not have come from the EDTA tube that was provided to us in this case.
So we did an extensive investigation on EDTA and determined, talking to some of the leading experts in the country, that there was no point in retesting. I also explored a method of determining the age of the blood to detect whether it was 05 blood from Stephen Avery or whether it was from the 1996 blood vial. But Dr. Reich explained to me, you're talking about blood that degrades and is in a car from a 2005 murder. So he was cautioning me that it would be unlikely that there would be enough blood or any test that could date this blood. So I began to explore other places the blood could have come from.
They say they found blood evidence in the car.
See, you give
Why do you think the DNA evidence is inaccurate?
Because somebody had to put it there.
You know, so now
I know I had a cut
doesn't
on
help
my
Stephen that it's
finger.
not simply the
I know
vial,
the blood was in my house.
but that's what
from
science
that.
says.
And I didn't clean it up. And it was cleaned up. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, how it all happened. It's puzzling.
He says an old cut reopened and bled on his sink.
Only thing I can think of
Way
is
back in
when I cut my hand.
2005,
When it broke
Stephen was
open
talking
again.
about the blood on
And
his
in the
sink.
bathroom, there was blood on the zinc. You know, I woke up the next morning, it was all cleaned up. As till right now, I'm still trying to think who cleaned it up, who was in my house.
For years, I mean, all the way back to 2005, he's talked about the fact the blood was taken from his trailer on the night of the 3rd, that he was bleeding, and that he bled in the sink and on the floor.
In December 2005, Stephen is interviewed by WBAY
Blood
reporter
was found in
Emily
several different
Matisse.
places in the car. How do you explain that?
They put it there from my bathroom zinc. You know, I cut my finger, and I broke open, and I had blood in the bathroom. And that was Thursday night. And when we left, me and Chucky went to Menards. That's when I seen taillights back by me.
How far away were you from the taillight?
We're by then the road, but we were turning. And that's why we turned. I told Chucky to turn around. Let's go look. So we turned around, and Chucky pulled up by Barbara's place, my sister. And I got the flashlight with the flatbed, and I looked. And maybe when I took the flashlight and looked around, maybe they were in my house, where I didn't go in there. And I was just looking for a vehicle.
Do you know what time that was when you saw the taillights Thursday night?
Probably between 6 and 7, somewhere in there. That's where I think where they got the blood. Because when I went with Chucky to the Menards, and I come back, I didn't go to the bathroom. I peed outside, you know. Then I went to bed. And Friday morning, when I got up and took a shower, it was gone. I didn't notice it no more.
What was gone Friday morning? The blood was gone?
Yeah, it was all cleaned up.
So Stephen never cleaned up that blood, but he cleaned up everything else. Because there's no Teresa or Brendan in his house. Kathleen at the salvage yard,
Hello.
going into Dolores's.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
All right, as long as I'm sitting down.
I know what you mean. Do you feel bad? Like,
I hurt. My legs hurt me. I can't walk hardly.
really? So you've gotten worse since I was
Yeah.
here last?
Yeah,
Have you talked to Stephen?
today I did.
Yeah. So he and I went through this last week. The order's going in to turn the stuff over to me for the
Oh, yeah.
testing. Yeah.
Good.
We did it by agreement because once you start litigating testing, it could take us 5 years. So we seem
No, I won't be around here in 5 years, I don't think.
No, I don't want to be. Don't want to be working on this in 5 years. I just got a screwdriver. Here.
Oh, you brought your own tools?
Yeah. I'm a full service law firm. Yeah, so I want to go up to the trailer. I'm going to try to take the sink out if I can. And you have the key.
Funny.
I
Kathleen
gotta get here
Zelman,
too. Chucky brought it here.
Yeah,
world
I could get
renowned lawyer.
It's behind it in paper
Carrying a
plates on the
screwdriver.
counter.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go up there, and then I'll come back by before I leave. I'll just tell you what I find.
Yeah, okay then.
Okay.
They're pulling up to Steven's trailer with Kurt, by the way, Bryce.
He said that there's no pry marks on the door. Let me go talk to him. Hey, Kurt,
Yes.
you know, this thing looks like it's got a pry mark on it. With,
That door?
yeah. See on
Yeah,
here?
it's clear
Yeah.
the one door's been pried open.
It's crazy, though, that they would come to the front. Probably somebody who's done it a bunch of times. Because I think cops, they would have that because they find cars all the time
Yeah.
and they get into them.
Like a Slim Jim.
Yeah. That's the official name for it.
Look at Kathleen using a Slim Jim.
That's it?
Duh. Here it
A
is.
pry bar.
And we just have to disconnect it. We gotta have that surface.
Yeah.
Okay. At least you popped it out.
We'll see. The wires seem to be connected still. I had some of the wrench to actually take the pipe out. Yeah.
I don't recall the date, Natalie, that they agreed with Kathleen that they would turn over
Is
the
it
RAV
moving?
and the
Yeah.
bones.
Should be pretty soon.
And I don't know how long they get.
Do you remember his finger being cut?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know it was mine bleeding, breaking open.
It bled in that sink.
Oh yeah, somebody cleaned it.
Do you remember him saying that? Someone had cleaned it?
He said something about it.
Yeah, because he kept trying to tell his trial attorneys that they took the blood out of the sink, but nobody was listening to him. Yeah, so I think that's the way it happened. So all that got done on the 3rd.
Well,
Would there be any reason that Stephen would have a pry bar? Because it looks like a pry bar was used to open up his trailer.
I don't know
You
why
might call it a nail pull.
they haven't provided it and why that's not for it.
Okay,
Honestly, don't close it.
Well, I know why they haven't provided
hang
it.
on a second once. That is a
Trying to
nail
hide.
remover.
That's what you guys call it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I just found out something. This
What?
is Carla, my daughter.
Yeah.
Cares.
Brenda's getting released.
Is he today?
I don't know, you want
Yeah.
here, talk to her.
Okay. Yeah, because maybe the judge.
Carla wanting
Yeah,
to
Carla,
talk
it's
to,
Kathleen,
and
how are
Carla had nothing to do with Brendan being released.
Just came online that church,
Doesn't. Are they gonna
So
do it
Carla
today?
didn't know anything about it. She's fishing with Kathleen. At this point, when Brendan's conviction was overturned there, Barb and Carla hated each
Are
other.
they gonna
So
release
she
him
was not
from
kept
where
on
he is
inside information on
incarcerated right
anything that
now?
was
Are they
happening
gonna
with
move
Brendan.
him and then release him, or
She's
can you
trying
tell?
to get on camera, and she's trying to get information from Kathleen.
Okay. I'll pull it up online. Thank you. That's great news.
It's not real news. It's fake news, Carla.
cry. Maybe it was going to be a happy cry.
So I just saw the court order. They're going to let Brendan out. He should get out today. They're just getting the probation officer approved.
I bet Barbara's crying if she hears it already.
Does she know?
That wasn't happening.
Well, I don't know.
Do you have a phone number? Seems like she
You have reached.
I think her phone stays in the car. She can't take it in there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Well, when was
That's
she
it.
supposed to
they're
get
pretty
off of
strict there.
When was she supposed to get off of work?
3.
Because if he can get out today, someone has to pick him up, right?
yeah, they do. Somebody probably wants to start driving because it's going to take them a while to get there.
And she should
that's
be the
about,
one.
what, 3-hour
Should be
drive
the
for
one.
her?
Well, we had to figure out
Hello,
where she
Matt.
works. Don't you
I
think?
have
Somebody
one
ought to
on
go tell her?
Custer.
We are
Thomas Street.
on part 2, episode 5.
Do you want to ride over there and tell her?
Should we go this way or go straight?
The Senex station is right. The Senex station was right to the right where they were at, and the cemetery is over there to the left.
So Columbia Correctional Center. I'm working off what they do in most places, but you never know. Maybe they couldn't talk to her. I don't know.
Her boss will not let her leave. I mean,
Are you
she's.
kidding?
Yeah, Barb's boss at this time said that he would fire her if she left.
See, I'm a little
Or
hesitant. I don't want to
if she
crowd
took
her
off any work
because
for
I'm not the
what was happening
attorney.
with Brendan right
Her
there.
boss is talking to Brendan's lawyer right now.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like Night Rider is talking to Barb's boss.
I don't know what time it is now. 2 o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock. She said she'd lose her job. She walked out.
I just got home from work and Brendan was supposed to be getting released, but that's all I know. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know nothing.
I know you know something, Scott. God, Barb looks horrible.
So fill us in, Ma.
Fill you in with what? All I know is he's coming home. It's the greatest feeling ever.
Did they say what day?
No,
Is it going to be this week?
don't know. She's calling me back later.
Knock it off.
27 News has been here at Columbia Correctional all day waiting on Dassey's release, but we have learned that the U.S. Probation Office in Milwaukee, which will supervise Dassey's release, has to visit the home where he plans to be living first before he can be released. Meanwhile, Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel said he plans to file an emergency motion to stop Dassey's release.
No table. Yeah, usually by 25-2, he'll call.
Yeah, it's getting close. There he is.
Sit.
Collect call from an inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charge, thank you for using entry. You may start the conversation now.
Hello, honey.
Hello?
You hear the good news?
Did you?
Yes?
Yeah, but I didn't get to see it.
You didn't get to see it? Why is that?
Because they put me out for the showers at the same time as that news was on.
Oh, really?
Hey, buddy, can you do us a favor and talk louder?
Shut up, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, but when are they gonna release me though?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be tonight.
Right.
Like I'm even wearing my own personal underwear right now.
Really?
Yeah,
Are you planning on getting out?
yeah. Then you put my sweatpants on.
You were really ready to go, weren't you?
Yeah, so I might be out by Friday probably.
So we're hoping. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I. I'll be more excited when you're here.
Brendan going home to Barb and Scott's
Yeah.
the worst thing for him.
That I know you're out.
Yeah, you'll be more excited once I'm in your arms.
Yep.
I'm sorry, people don't like when I say
It's
this.
probably gonna be just
He's
me and your
safer in
mother.
prison.
Well, I think they would bring my stuff to you guys first before they release it. Because when Steven was going out, he had Mom's hand in one hand and the other one in
Jenny's.
Oh, yeah.
Jen's.
Well, I don't know if he even brung anything with him. I think he left everything there. I don't know. I don't remember.
I thought he brought his typewriter with him, didn't he?
Oh, God. I don't know. That's been too long ago.
Yeah.
So is there a different way in there besides the front door?
Duh.
But the Sally porch just right in the front, so I don't think there is.
We're just trying to figure out a way to get you out there safely, that's all.
Yeah.
Without any news media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tuesday, November 15th, one day after granting the order.
A lot of people are really frustrated. The media is making him out as kind of a rock star and a victim, when the real victim is Teresa Halbach.
I mean, come on now, he's not a rock star, he's a killer. They did what they did, and I think he should never get out.
He's a victim
And
of
I had to pull over and
Manitowoc
tell you because it's just how
and his family.
There's some legal issue, okay, fine, but these guys did it. And somehow along the way we've lost that.
Tuesday, November 15th, 2016, federal probation officers meet with Barb and Scott and approve Brendan's residence, which originally was
Megan,
going
we
to be
just learned about it.
and then all of a sudden Barb and Scott changed.
Department of Justice has filed a motion trying to stop Dassey's release.
He's going to be behind those bars here for at least one more day as the state filed an emergency order to stop him from getting out. Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel notes Dassey's lawyers claim his confession was coerced. Schimmel says even if it was, that doesn't mean Dassey didn't actually sexually assault, kill, and mutilate Teresa Halbach. Accordingly, Dassey's release should be regarded as a serious public safety issue.
So even
And
if
Schimmel
his
is asking
confession
the
was
court to make a
coerced,
decision
he
on
did
this
all the
by
things.
tomorrow. And of course, Dassey's family has said they hope to have him home by Thanksgiving. In Portage, Nick Bohr, WISN 12 News.
And Barb and Scott really don't like this happening in November when they're usually hunting for the month. And we don't visit Brendan at all.
This morning, Judge Duffin reviewed the state's motion and concluded that they just rehashed what they had said before, and there was no reason for him to change his mind. So Judge Duffin, in his decision, based upon the home visit, the interviews, the review of Brendan's records, based upon all of that, ordered that Brendan be released no later than Friday at 8 o'clock.
Over the moon. Brendan and his mother spent 10 Thanksgivings apart. And the idea that he could be home by Thanksgiving is, I mean, talk about tasting gratitude.
A few hours later, the state of Wisconsin files an emergency
wonder why current Attorney General Brad Schimmel is fighting so hard to keep Dassey locked up.
I have to approach this from a perspective of the family of Teresa Halbach, and they've had no opportunity to hug her on Thanksgiving, and until we sort out with certainty whether that jury's verdict against Brendan Dassey will stand or not, we need to keep more yes.
Basically, the state is doing whatever they can to keep this from happening. Right now, the ball's in the 7th Circuit.
One day before Brendan's ordered release on bond, November 17, 2016.
Good afternoon. This is Brad Dvorak calling from Milwaukee. I'm wondering who the duty judge is this week. And I'm calling about the Dassey case. Yeah, okay. So we don't know who it's going to. Okay, thanks. Bye.
This is breaking news now from today's TMJ4.
And that breaking news, Brendan Dassey will remain in prison pending the outcome of an appeal. The U.S. Court of Appeals in Chicago just made that ruling.
Now, the 3-judge panel out of Chicago didn't offer an opinion on why it issued the stay. It simply granted it. This is the same court that will ultimately decide whether or not to overturn the August ruling by Judge William Duffin that overturned Dassey's conviction. In response to today's order, Dassey's legal team released a statement that said, "We are disappointed, more than words can say, but the fight goes on." Meanwhile,
Brendan has to stay in prison until his appeal is resolved. It was a blow, but, you know, Brendan's a rock here. He's our rock.
And his faith in us and his optimism is what keeps us going forward. This is one skirmish in a series of battles that is going to end in the 7th Circuit, and we're ready to fight for Brendan, and we're confident that we're going to prevail.
Yeah, Natalie, I don't get it at all.
Dassey and his attorneys were expecting his release from the Columbia Correctional Institution here in Portage by Friday at 8 p.m. But right now, it's clear that's not going to happen.
Stephen Avery is still serving a life sentence. He's currently being held in Papung Correctional. He, of course, was the focus of that documentary, Making a Murderer. Avery's current attorney, Kathleen Zellner, claims new testing of some key pieces of evidence will clear him of that.
Dolores and Al.
You want this hamburger?
Get me off that goddamn camera.
Uh-oh. Alan's mad.
I had a bad day.
Me too. I don't know what's Barbara going to do with her job. Remember, she took a whole month off.
She always takes a month off to go
How's she
hunting.
going to live? She got over $1,000 house
She
payment.
didn't take a month off for Brendan. She takes it off to go hunting every year.
The Appeals Court has granted the state's request to keep Brendan Dassey in prison. Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel filed that emergency motion yesterday. This morning, 7th District Court of Appeals approved the motion for the stay.
And the timeline is the big question here. Federal court records show December deadlines for both sides to file paperwork in the appeal regarding Dassey's overturn.
That all sticks in my head. How many years of it?
another day, just ain't there yet. They say to keep on fighting, and there's still more stuff on TV. You went through the same thing I did, and you got your hopes up, and
it's
then
very sad.
of course they shut you down again. Every time you turn around, you think something's positive, and then you just get kicked in the face again.
So the surface of the sink is hard and flat. And then, you know, roughly, what was it the state expert said, the amount of blood in the car?
I believe he estimated 2 to 3 milliliters.
Yeah.
Something.
My recollection is 1 to 2 milliliters.
So we got
from
6
his
spots
trial
in the
testimony.
car, but the spots are all small. And that's his estimate on it.
Yes,
Okay.
I think 1 to 2, he said.
Right. So let's talk about the blood in the car. We got a description by the Wisconsin Crime Lab that on this carpet they found flakes, and I'm talking about the
Blood
carpet
flakes
right
on the carpet.
in front of the driver's seat. So there were blood flakes on this carpet, and the analysts picked those flakes up with tweezers.
Unless you have a considerable amount of blood on a carpet, you're not going to necessarily see flakes or drying effect, because with 1 or 2 drops or 3 drops, it's going to absorb right into the carpet, and to see flaking like that visually would be probably not very likely.
What if we open one of our tubes and drip onto this carpet? Okay, let's just watch what happens when we drip.
So we're seeing very small drops because they're absorbed into the carpet. Now, do you want me to make a larger amount?
Yeah, we could do another line of a larger, and then we could drip in the sink.
And see, this makes perfect sense to me. You know, so if it's coming, if you've got
So
the
let's
cut
try in the sink.
and it
If
drips
we
onto the
just
carpet, it's
drip
going to
in
soak
there,
into the
and then
fiber.
we'll let it sit as we're talking, and we can compare the 2 surfaces.
Kind of like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we can.
Yeah. Okay.
That's going to take some time to dry.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, what you're seeing basically is the blood drying on the fibers.
Right.
If someone were to be processing this car for blood, I would expect that they would have taken the whole blood stain. They're quite visible.
Right.
You wouldn't be taking a flake off one of these stains.
What the state has represented to me is there were not blood stains, there were just flakes. She's not describing stains. She is not picking up flakes from stains. She's just picking up flakes, which tells you there's no stain there.
Right, which means that the flakes
are put
would have
there.
to come from a different source, whether it be from somewhere above. Although looking at the transfer stain on the dashboard, I don't see any evidence of that flaking.
And it's not, it would never land where this carpet is. This carpet is between the console on the car. The flakes are back, you can't see it in this picture. It's like between the console and the edge of the seat is where she's finding them.
I don't
So-
understand
That doesn't make
why
any sense.
the defense can't
if there's
test the
flakes, there's
car.
got to be a source of those
Well, I do
flakes.
understand.
Yeah,
But
because she is
I
not
understand
saying
why
there
the
was a
state
stain.
doesn't want it to happen.
And that's
Why
highly
does the judge
suspicious.
allow this
I
to
find
happen?
it unusual, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
I mean, I
understand
just
that
think that's preposterous.
Question.
Okay, so then let's talk about this blood, which it looks like it's flowing down. What is that?
Appears to me, a angular passive drip stain.
That just ran down like gravity?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, I've got some really good high-speed videos that show how this is formed. The blood drop actually, it hits the surface here, and then it just kind of runs down like this, and then finally stops. but that's pretty much what we're seeing there.
Let me ask you this. If you got into the trailer and the blood was in the sink, could you have picked a drop up if you had this? Because I'm trying to think the removal to the drop, because swabbing, you're not going to create a drop.
Sorry to displace you again here.
Yeah, here, let's see.
Well, here.
So let's see if,
Sure you can.
Oh, that's, yeah.
See,
that
the-
would be the better way to
The
do it.
planted blood in the car
Yeah,
is
but
the
they got
thing
in
that
and it was
I
wet,
just
so
can't
that's how you pull it
come up.
up.
Well, here. Okay, I pulled some blood up from there.
Yeah.
And let's see what we do here.
Other than, you know, the vial was
You're
the
going to get
thing
pretty
that
much
made
the
the
same
most
thing. I haven't got
sense.
the same amount there.
And how you
Look
would be
just like
able
the one
to
there. In
plant
fact, I
blood
think
around
the
the car
bottom of
like
that's
that.
not even cut off. But anyway, that looks pretty much like what you're seeing there, right? You
I
agree?
have a hard time believing
So now I
Bobby
know that's
Dassey
how it's pulling up with the dropper.
would be able to do this. I don't know.
Stephen A.
I haven't heard anything
on
to this
the edge of the
point
sink, and then
is an aha,
Should,
this is how it
eventually,
happened.
you know, fragment
theory
after
to me.
you'll see cracks in the surface, etc. And we're waiting to see when that will
But
occur.
just because this one portion of the case I don't understand, can't figure out, doesn't negate everything else that points to
All right.
Okay.
You ready for the scraping episode?
Yeah. Oh, those are good size.
This one?
Yep.
His scalpel scraping the
let's try
bathroom
this one,
sink
a little
was like
moist,
nails
but-
on a chalkboard right there.
Yeah, it's still broke up. I think that non-absorbent surface really great.
You got quite a few in there
Yeah,
now.
you got a bunch of them. Look at that.
Well, that's
Now the
pretty-
blood
I think
flakes
that'll
make
work.
sense.
So
And if
now
you put it in the car, you should put it on some white paper or something so it can be seen.
I will. Yeah,
You know.
I'll take.
All right.
All right, now what we should do is what we did. We can swab up.
Do you want this
Teresa,
swab to
I
go?
can believe.
Yeah, these swabs we're going to do by the ignition. The officers that are suspected in that activity were evidence techs who carried swabs and distilled water.
True, Rebecca. That you're right. That's the thing that would make sense to me.
Now let's see what I got
Is
here.
that blood may not even be
How's that?
Stevens at all, and they just say it is.
And seats. And then I want to see up here what. There it is. Could that be true? That it's just that simple? Someone got in the trailer, wiped up the blood, and they dripped it into the car and smeared above the ignition. I think the defense attorneys probably underestimated what they were up against. And I think that they, I
Right.
mean, the
Yeah,
state just
Rebecca,
has
they
enormous
have to
resources. They
hide
can bring in all these
the key.
experts. They can, you know, they have three
real
attorneys
key
at the table. They've got
is
all
with
the
that
cops working for them. I mean, you are outgunned when you come into it. But I still believe if you just had a blood spatter expert, you know, I have one case is just on blood spatter. So if you could have definitively taken down one piece of evidence and shown it was planted. It isn't like this would have cost, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And
You could
Marie, I
have gotten the
definitely believe it's
experts,
body.
I think,
And
for
that law
20 grand.
enforcement
A lot of
planted
experts will help you just
the
if you're in that
key and the
situation. I mean,
bullet.
this was child's play for Stuart James. I mean, he could tell immediately the blood spatter testimony was just completely wrong. it's hard to say that someone's ineffective, but
Right, Terry.
the state's
I
got 14
complain about
experts
that
and
all
you've
the
got
time.
2.
I mean, my hair's now
There's
tied up
something
right now.
dramatically
But
wrong.
still, I was able to.
Well, you know, people ask us about the verdict and how we explain it,
I can
and
just
I
pull
think a
my
lot of it
hair
was
out.
the
I
pretrial
shed
publicity
all
that
over
this
the place.
particular jury
So
just
you don't even have
couldn't
to
put
cut my
aside
hair
that,
for
and
my
combined with the fact
DNA to
that
be
the
everywhere I
ruling
go,
shortly
because
before
my
trial
hair
that said you
just
weren't going to be
comes out.
able to point the finger at any other suspect and present evidence of that.
So you cut her
Unlike in a lot
hair,
of cases,
and
we
not a
had
single strand of her
suspects,
hair is in
the
that
other
trailer
suspects
anywhere.
who could very well have done this and tried to present that, and but the court ruled against us by stretching the prior law in a way that made it impossible for us to do that. You know, I think
blood,
that
no
really
semen.
handicapped us from the beginning.
Because when you go with
Based on my research,
what
Wisconsin
Brendan
courts were
was
more
tried on,
receptive to
she
ineffective
was
assistance
raped by
claims than maybe they
Brendan
are in
and
Illinois.
Stephen.
If you can show that
Neither one of their
something the
semens
attorney did or
in
did
that
not
room,
do
on
undermines
that bed,
confidence in the
nothing.
outcome, then that's something on which a court might grant relief. So, for example, if an attorney fails to present expert testimony that could have supported the defense, or, you know, there are other cases that talk about evidence that could have shown that the prosecution's version of events was false. You know, if that's something a defense attorney didn't adequately investigate or present to the jury.
I think that'll definitely apply here.
There would be no
And
way
then
they
the
would
defense
use
argued
condom.
the Denny standard was unconstitutional, but it's been part of Wisconsin law since 1984.
Exactly. They did a couple things that I think would go into what you were just discussing about ineffective assistance
This
of
is
counsel.
Doug Johnson
One
talking.
argument they had was that Denny
He's
doesn't
brilliant.
apply to us, and there's no precedent for that. And then secondly,
So,
they said we don't have to prove
He handles
motive,
the Kent Pellegrini case.
which there's no
for
case law to support that type of
Teresa,
argument.
for Kathleen.
So what's
and then
developing
for
here
Melissa
is a
Kaluzinski,
pattern.
he's second chair.
I'll
with
give
her.
you some examples. It's a failure on
So,
the
like,
forensic
while
evidence to
at
follow up on what
Melissa's
they've got. It's a
trial or
failure to
hearing,
follow
whatever,
up on leads
while
in the
Kathleen's
police
talking,
reports with certain
Doug is
individuals.
sitting
The
at
dog
the table
tracks,
and writing
which,
notes
you know,
and
the
stuff
scent
that he
dogs are
gives
all
to
over the
Kathleen,
quarry.
and then Kathleen
The
uses
cumulative effect of that would, of course, undermine, I think, confidence in the verdict to just have so many things that you didn't do as the defense attorney.
Absolutely. And there are cases that talk about cumulative error in Wisconsin, and that's something that the court will consider.
Yeah, I mean, they're successful in getting the planted evidence theory in front of the jury, but it just has no impact because it doesn't have any substance to it. I mean, the blood spatter expert says he will testify that the blood by the ignition was put on with an applicator. You know,
I can't believe they didn't have a blood spatter expert.
yeah, it's like when you look at
Your whole theory is blood is planted.
Ineffective assistance of counsel. That they did not have a blood spatter expert. Defense failure to hire blood spatter expert. Defense failure to present viable Denny suspect. Ineffective assistance of counsel.
when I've done murder trials, what I want the jury to hear is my story of what happened. And my story is going to involve a different scenario of who killed the victim. And I'm going to push that. That's at the top of my list to do that. Because if I can convince the jury that someone else could have committed the crime, I'm going to win. When I spent time with Josh Radon, he was very forthcoming with me and really went beyond what he needed to do to answer my questions. And
yeah, right now,
I
how
believe
many
that
Denny
he was
suspects are
completely
there?
credible. So, based on his alibi, which we thoroughly checked out, based on my
Ryan
interview
Hilgas.
with him and the additional evidence he gave me, I ruled him out
Bradley
as a
Check.
Denny suspect. So I crossed him off the
Chuck.
list.
Earl, Bobby, Scott.
The other thing I learned that was
Zipper.
extremely important was that the suspected human pelvic bones weren't on his private property. They were on the Manitowoc gravel property. So we could then broaden the investigation.
Kathleen travels to Virginia to consult with a former FBI agent.
It's what plus why equals who. What happened?
Greg
Why did it
McQuarrie.
happen? If we understand why it happened, we'll know who did it. It's I'm at the risk of oversimplifying that, but basically that's the pattern you want to go down. So doing a real thorough victimology. You want to know everyone she's been in touch with, and who they are, and what's the nature of the relationship, and you know, and all of that. Especially close in time to the homicide.
Do you see any risk factor elevation with the type of job that she had?
Yes, she was going out, she was doing these auto trader things, shooting photos of cars in different places and different people. Again, she's going to go out and probably meet people she doesn't know. But 70 to 80% of people who are murdered by someone they know. So it's a combination of looking at that particular victim and then looking at the people around her. If someone's in their 20s,
you're right.
Sexual relationships, boyfriends,
You're right,
whatever, how many, right? You know, all those sorts of things, because it's when those are the things that can be emotional and trigger people to do bad things. So those are the areas that you want to concentrate in and look in.
I still can't believe that
to those
Kayla and
private
Dolores
parts of her
went
life,
to
you know,
McDonald's
intimate
or
relations
whatever it was,
and so forth, and you know, she's
no
sleeping with
ask
somebody's
for no
husband. I mean, that's a risk factor. You know, all those things you have to really understand to
me,
move
also, there's no such
in
thing
the
as a
right
hamburger.
direction to make sure you're not get off and
do
wrong
families, like with victims of families?
Families are emotional. I understand that. That's a delicate part, dealing with these are the vicarious victims, say in a homicide, or the family members and friends. And you have to deal with that artfully and compassionately with them, but you've got a job to do. And you've got to get in there and find out what was going on. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to everybody, including the victim. So yes, everybody close to her, in contact with her, even remotely at the beginning, has to be looked at as a potential suspect until you can rule them out.
I highly
One of
recommend.
the things that we did was we created a chart of
from
who
Illinois
did they get an alibi from.
up
So if we
through
start
Wisconsin,
with, you know, the married man who's
that
getting
you
a
stop in
divorce
Kenosha
that she
at the
had
Mars
the sexual
Cheese
relationship
Castle.
with. And then a friend of hers described that she wanted to break that off, but
Such
he kept
good
calling her.
And they have a
He
restaurant
described it as they were
at that
still
store,
great
too,
friends.
and you can
then,
get
of
deep
course, he
fried
provides
cheeseburgers,
information
too.
that she's had sexual relations with her roommate. Her roommate is best friends with her ex-boyfriend, so
her roommate also had sex with
ex-boyfriends
her.
have to always be in the suspect pool.
The ex-boyfriend is never asked. He says at trial, he's very forthcoming. No, I was never asked to provide an alibi. The roommate was never asked to provide an alibi.
And the roommate had sex
she
with her.
goes missing on the 31st, but nobody reports that until the 3rd of November. So it isn't like when she doesn't come home the 31st, the 1st, the 2nd, that anybody's reporting it. It's her business colleague that finally calls the mother and says, I'm worried.
You do
so
you,
would that make you
I got no
comfortable
issue
with
with it,
eliminating
but
them?
there's
Or
so
No,
many
not at all. You can't
people
eliminate
that could have been looked
based
at.
on that. It's a lack of investigation. Each of those individuals have to be looked at as potential suspects.
So many people looked at.
The first thing we did was start with who was Teresa Halbach and who was she in relationships with. And we checked out from her phone records and everything we could gather, her emails, everyone that she had contact with. And we did criminal background
Mars
checks
Cheese
on them.
Castle
And
has a
then we looked at
website. I wonder if
potential
they would just
alibis
ship them
for
to
that
you.
day, possible motives, the nature of the relationship, all of that we sorted through to refine it down to one person,
Sherry?
2 people that might meet the Denny standard. And at the top of my list was Ryan Hilligus. There was tension between them.
I don't currently think
during
that
the summer.
because
She didn't even want to
I believe
photograph a wedding
everything
that she knew he was
points
going to be the best man in.
Bobby.
They broke up in 2001.
But if you
Ryan
are going to
was
make a
still
case
coming
for
over a
Ryan
lot,
Hilgas being the
visiting,
killer,
and Teresa
then
even
yes.
wrote in an email in October that she realized that Ryan was still interested in her, was still checking her out. It's clear to me that she's over Ryan, but Ryan still seems interested in her. And then after she's murdered, he's moved into her place, and he's there where there's potentially evidence. I found that just unbelievable. And then he's providing the most intimate details
Why is he
about
living
her
there? Why is he
to the
going through her dirty
investigators.
underwear?
When you say you talked to the police, who did you speak with?
Let's see.
Right,
I know,
the day planner.
Thursday night when we were at the house, I went over after Scott called me. I went to the house and we kind of started calling around, calling friends then. But I believe it was Jerry Poggle and Detective Wiegert who were at the house Thursday night, collecting belongings and asking questions.
Well, see,
the family
here's
was there
the thing.
also.
And so did you tell Sheriff Poggle that you would sort of
Law
become the
enforcement
coordinator of all of
could
this?
have gone on that property,
I don't
or
believe so.
somebody
I
from the
think it was
search
just
party
kind of
could have
assumed
gone
I
on
was
that
kind of the
property.
contact
They did
for the
not
whole
get
search.
permission to
If anybody
search.
wanted to help, they
They
were
found the
instructed to
car,
call me.
opened it,
Basically,
got the day
I guess started
planner.
with me.
Then they needed
Did you
Pam
at some
Sturm
point
to
ever
go
go to
and
the
get
property?
permission
Every
because
property?
everything's inadmissible
When was that?
without permission.
Jeez, when did we go there? Saturday or Sunday? I'm not
So
real
say
sure on
Ryan
the dates.
and Blodorn and Michael
It's
Halbach
possibly that Monday or Tuesday.
went
Which would have
to
been,
the salvage yard,
let's see.
found it,
Is that the 6th or
called
7th?
Manitowoc.
Let me ask you this: when you went to the property, was it
and
was
then
it still, to
have
your
to
knowledge, in the
get
custody of the law enforcement?
Yes.
somebody
Did you
from the
pass
search
through any
party to go and get
checkpoints?
permission.
Yes.
And did the officers who let you in know that you had a relationship as a
How did
former
Bobby and
boyfriend
who get
with
together?
the missing woman at that point?
I don't know if anybody knew I was an ex-boyfriend, or I guess I never saw the relevance in it. Or
Did
tell
Sheriff
me.
Poggle know that?
What's that?
Did Sheriff Poggle know of your relationship with her?
At that time, I don't believe so. I think everybody just assumed I was a good friend.
Just
He's
a good
got
friend.
access to Teresa's personal possessions, to her residence, and then he's on the Avery property.
I don't think
crossing
there's
the
any connection
checkpoints
between
on
Bobby and
November
Ryan.
7th. The key, the sub key, is discovered on the 8th in Mr. Avery's bedroom. We think that there was a sub key at her house, and somebody who had access to her house gave that key to the police.
Yep.
We've made repeated efforts to talk to him, and we've told him the reason we want to talk to him is to rule him out. If he can give me plausible explanations for things. But he doesn't respond. And one of the most suspicious parts of the case is his story about the parking light on Teresa's vehicle. He told the police that he had talked to family and friends and had determined that Teresa had broken out the parking light before October 31st, made an insurance claim, taken a cash payout, but she kept the money and didn't get the car repaired. So that's interesting because that's elaborate. And over the years, what you notice is people who lie usually have real elaborate lies. So the first thing that I checked out was that parking light broken when she visited the appointments that day? Her client, Mr. Schmitz, said that the car looked new, car's 6 years old. Our interpretation of that was he didn't see any damage.
I don't know.
The
I
car
don't think
wasn't
that any
banged
of
up
her
or anything.
appointments would have noticed if that light
So then we
was
went
missing
back to
or
the
not.
insurance company, and they said she never made a claim about the parking light. She made a claim about her windshield wiper, this little tiny expense.
Yeah,
but she didn't
Maz,
make
the
a
way
claim
they're
about
looking at
this
each other with
really
that,
significant
it's-
damage to the front
That's
of her
why
vehicle.
I always believed they were
But
part
the most
of
important
finding
thing
the
is the
rat.
missing poster. Because when you put out a description of a car, and it was a detailed description, if it has any body damage,
They
you
planted.
put that on there.
I always
Because
thought
that
that
would
they
have
planted
stood
the
out
rat.
above everything else if people were seeing a RAV driving around with that whole front parking light knocked out. So the parking light was not damaged before she was murdered. It is part of the events of the murder. And Mr. Hillegas connected himself to the parking light. And that is a huge piece of evidence linking him to the crime.
That's not correct. I did call her.
Sorry to offend everyone, but I'm very offended by having a client who's innocent and is now spending, has now spent 13 years locked up for something he didn't do. So all of our feelings are hurt. But I'm going at it wherever the Denny Road and the evidence takes me, that's where I'm going. And if people want to get off the train, give us a call.
Right.
We're
Goes
totally
off the
reasonable. But I have no explanations for all of these things on Ryan Hillegas.
Yeah, Natalie, I like that too.
So your attorney's got the brief all done, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for the regular appeal, right?
And that's for the 7th Circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one in Chicago.
Yeah.
Did they tell you how many pages it was?
No.
No.
No. I haven't talked to Laura, so. Oh, but she's good, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie, it's hard right now with my thoughts on Ryan because everything changes.
The process in the 7th Circuit involves each
Now,
side
due to
having an
this
opportunity
new
to file
witness
briefs
seeing
in front of the
Bobby
court that
pushing the
spell out
rap.
your argument in written form. And then the
So
court
I
will
thought
review those
before
briefs and review the record
that
of the proceedings that happen below in federal court and in state
Lodorn
court.
and Michael Halbach
And then comes oral
helped
argument,
law
at
enforcement
which
plant the rap
point
there.
lawyers from both sides will
But now
go into
they
a
didn't.
courtroom at the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago and have an opportunity
But they're
to
involved in
make their
something.
points out loud to a panel of judges
So
who will ask questions.
did they
of
go
either
and
side.
look themselves at the salvage yard without permission and found the
Gretchen,
rap there?
Brett, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for having me, Jamie. So you've got several areas, and just give our viewers some idea of like how much is prosecuting specific types of cases versus government affairs and so forth.
Well, we have about 100 lawyers who work in our Division of Legal Services. About 24 of them do criminal prosecutions for the DA's offices when they have a highly complex case or a case that's going to take tremendous resources. And they also do the criminal appeals for the DA's offices. And we have about 100 special agents with the Division of Criminal Investigation who handle complex cases.
So investigators, not just lawyers, as employees.
Right.
Okay.
We also have the 3 crime labs. So I have about 200 people that work in our crime labs in
But you're
Madison,
showing,
Wausau, and
as they're
Milwaukee.
showing all these people that he's listing
We
they
also
have,
have
they're
our
all
Solicitor
corrupt.
General's Division
Every single
that's
one of them
working
is
on
corrupt that you're
defending our
showing here.
state's
So who cares that
sovereignty
you have
relative
all
to the
these
federal government.
experts? Right, Rebecca, I agree with you. Brendan saying yeah is not agreeing to the affirmative. There's a pause, there's silence, and you just go, yeah. It's like aloha. It's got multiple meanings.
The case is set for oral argument on Valentine's Day, 2017. And that means that both sides will get to present their case in 20 minutes to a panel of judges
Terry,
of the
if
7th
that
Circuit
her keys
Court of Appeals.
there.
This is a federal court that is one step below the United States Supreme Court.
Maz, you need to check
It's a
in with
very
the office,
important day,
and then they're going
and
to
that's
tell you
why we
where to
are
go.
putting so much energy
You know,
into
what are you
preparing
looking for
Laura
particularly?
for this case.
Because the cars, the cars are not just
This is
in
just the
random
first in a
spots
series
there.
of mock arguments.
There is a method to the
What we're
madness
trying
of
to
a
do is
junkyard.
to, as best as possible, replicate the experience that Laura's going to have when she steps up in front of the Seventh Circuit. One of our students is actually going to argue the case for the state. There will be a panel of judges that I have selected, leading law school faculty, some who have experience in this area, some who are fresh to this case. Because we won in the federal district court, the state gets to go first. He'll get questioned by the judges because we want to make this as real as possible, so Laura can sort of pick up on the questions that the judge asks the state. Laura will then get 20 minutes, essentially defending the district court's decision in Brendan's case. This is a hugely important day for Brendan Dassey. When we won in federal court in front of Judge Duffin, that was about a 1 in 100 shot. Each step of the way you go into the court system, the higher and higher levels of appeal, the harder it is to win. And if we lose in the Seventh Circuit, it just makes our climb that much more difficult.
You know what, Terry? Laura Nyrider is somebody that I really like and respect. I went to both hearings in Chicago, and I was disappointed.
Brendan was the first case that I got assigned to as a law student, and it changed my life.
Prepared well at all, I don't think.
When I got assigned to Brendan's case and watched those videos, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I had to help people like this.
I now teach the same class that I took 10 years ago.
You know, it's kind of come full circle for me. You know, these aren't just names on a page. These aren't just legal arguments. These are real people with families and friends.
I don't think, Lisa, there's ever been a reason given. Just not giving it to her.
Brendan will not be in attendance at this argument. It's very unusual for defendants to be present. I think Brendan is, you know, unsettled by this. I think he is cautiously optimistic that this will be one step closer to freedom. But he also realizes that there have been disappointments all along the way.
Yeah, there's fingerprints on that raft.
What has this kid been through from ages 16 to 26 now? And, you know, it's not over. It's not over until either the government says that we're not going to prosecute you, or
They're supposed to hold on to evidence
you know,
as
a
long
jury
as
comes back
somebody
with a not
is
guilty verdict.
incarcerated for it, Patricia.
You know, and actually, there is no statute of limitations, come to think of it, for murder. So it's probably the not guilty verdict that is the only thing that's final here. It's something Brendan's gonna live with for the rest of his life, like it or not.
Hi, this is Laura Nyrider. I have a question. I am in the process of trying to e-file my
Yeah, the RAV could be new
argument card.
evidence. If
There will
she's
be a
ever able
panel
to
of
get it
3
and run new
judges.
testing on
We
it.
will not know that panel until the morning of the argument. So part of what we are doing is making sure that she understands the viewpoints of all 11 of the judges on the Seventh Circuit, that she's read opinions by all of those judges on the areas that we are covering in argument so that she can adapt her argument if need be, depending on who the panel is.
I'm allegedly related to one of the judges at the 7th Circuit that Brendan had through my birth father, my biological father, that I don't know him or his family. That's the end of episode 5. No, I was filing my nails. So we're going into episode 6 now. This is the last episode for today.
Usually at about 6 o'clock I get up. But it was raining. I was listening to the rain on the house. It must have rained all night. I can't lie in bed and just think. I do that at night yet. I think that's what Barbara does too. Oh, there.
Showing the best mom ever flowers that I bought Dolores.
Good, but it takes time. Everything takes time. Just hang on. That's all you have to do, hang on.
Me too, Maz. Kathleen pulling up the Waupun. So you'll see there's a sidewalk that's right in front of it. That's where we'll be at the rally.
I think that people that are wrongfully incarcerated, it's like the coal miners when there's some type of explosion in the mine.
Absolutely, Maz.
And they're stuck underground. And so you can communicate with them, but you know that they're eventually going to run out of air. And so you're in that, you know, with them, trying to reassure them, trying to give them hope. When you leave someone like that, you always feel like you're sending them back, you know, like underground. And so there's that really terrible feeling that you might not make it in time, or your efforts to rescue them might not work.
And now think of that Stephen hasn't had any visits in a year, over a year due to COVID. No inmates have. Some are lucky to be able to have video visits, so you can at least see people on the screen. But phone calls and mail, and if you can do email, which Stephen doesn't do email, that's all you got. Yeah, right, Lisa? Oh my gosh, can you imagine if they had the death penalty? That's why I'm against the death penalty now. Dr. Carl Reich, forensic DNA
Have you got
consultant.
the tube for the blood?
I do. I'm using dividing evidence, so I have the tube to take the blood.
Great.
I've brought another syringe and a set of needles. And
Great.
of course, it just goes into a container that's essentially unbreakable.
Okay, perfect.
On December 8th, 3.5 months after filing her motion for scientific testing, Kathleen and Dr. Wright go to pick up 9 pieces of evidence that the state has agreed to release. So this was 2016.
Shot in the dark in that this stuff's been there 10 years. We don't know exactly what the condition is. We don't have any idea. So we'll have the first cutting, the carpet, then we're going to have the swab, then we've got a second cutting, and then there's a swab of a blood stain from a CD case. The key...
The swab used on the hood latch?
I'm excited just to see what we see, because we've been speculating, looking at these pictures.
Right.
So they're at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab.
Special prosecutor, because we don't want to contaminate anything.
For 2 hours, Dr. Wright meets with DNA, blah, 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 big hair Colhane to divide the evidence samples.
Left with 8 items because remember, one item was not divided.
Yes.
So each one of those was individually sealed and labeled, and then I put that into a paper bag and put that paper bag into another paper bag, which is with me here.
Yeah. So in 2016, Colhane's still working.
A 2 mil blood microfuge tube, and inside the microfuge tube were a few, literally 1 millimeter or maybe 1.5 millimeter size flakes. There were approximately 7 such flakes. That would have been the best blood sample from the evidence for doing whatever additional testing you might want.
Sounds like there's probably going to be enough.
I don't see that there's enough to do anything with.
Okay.
It's really small.
Right. But at least we know where we stand.
We know what we have. We didn't know what we had before, and now
we know.
Now
and we've got the key.
The key is certainly there.
Yeah, and I think this the hood latch swab.
Correct. I'll tell you what was interesting is
I
that
don't know if the key was handled during the trial.
Photographs.
I don't recall.
So she had examined the evidence before we got there and had made notes on the seals. But there was no images taken of the items. There was no images taken of the seals.
That's kind of unusual, don't you think?
Yes.
Description expired 4 times.
It's been opened 4 times?
Should be the analyst's initials and the date on each seal.
There's an orange developed along the edges. You can't see it very well in this picture.
They're looking at the sub key right now.
It needs to be filtered. Definitely residue.
Maybe this is bleach.
Oh, now you start to see the orange. Now you see the orange. We do the other side in the same condition.
Orange or green?
It looks green here. It's orange though.
Good memory,
most
Bryce.
vulnerable piece of evidence to attack is the key. And that's because of the evidence the state presented. So the key isn't found until there have been repeated searches of Avery's trailer. All of that was highly suspicious. But overriding that is the DNA of Stephen Avery on the key.
I received the key. It was in a sealed brown paper bag. I opened it up. I had gloves on, and I held the metal part of the key in one hand.
Pictures or it didn't happen?
The black, I should show you up here, this black rubberized part of the key with a sterile cotton swab. There were no visible indications of any staining. So I was primarily interested to see if I could recover DNA that had been left behind by possibly touching.
And did you compare the profile that you developed from your swabbing of this key with the DNA profile that you developed from the buccal swab of Stephen Avery?
Yes, I did. The same 15 markers. These are the types at each one of these markers, and you can see at every type, the profile from the evidence sample is consistent with the profile from Stephen Avery.
Now, when you tested this swab for your key, you used the entire swab, didn't you?
Yes.
Normally, you'll try and just cut a swab in half, use half, save half.
Well, I felt that being what we refer to as a touched item, and there being no visible indication of a biological fluid like blood, that yes, I would probably have a low amount to start with.
Okay. If you could look at your notes, maybe refresh your recollection, if you can give me some estimate from your records about just what the level of DNA you found on that key was.
My quantitation is 0.17 for 1 microliter.
The thing that's suspicious about the DNA is the quantity of it, because she said it was touch DNA. And Dr. Reich felt, just looking at it, that there was too much DNA on the key to have just been the result of handling. But the defense had no DNA expert rebuttal to that testimony. On cross,
right, Maz?
It's very difficult to make those points because the state's witness isn't going to concede anything, and you don't have the scientific expertise to really
Another
refute
thing
it.
that I've thought of, Maz, is the slippers right there.
So once again, the jury's sitting there without any way, any framework, any context to understand what does it mean? What does it mean there's no mixture? What does it mean that the person that owned the keys' DNA isn't on it?
There are some studies that talk about how the last person who
Colhane
touches an
always
item may
looks
leave
smug
the
and like
major
she's gonna
portion
laugh,
of DNA that's
doesn't
left
she?
on there, right?
Yes.
But most often when that happens, there's still a mixture and there's a minor contributor as well, right?
No, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
In some cases, yes. If you have someone who is a good shedder and sheds a lot of DNA, when they touch something, a lot of the
She
studies
just
show that the last person
used her
is going to
hand
be
as she was
the
clearing
DNA that
her
you
throat.
pick up. If you don't shed a lot of DNA, then you may not find any at all.
For a number of years, a long time ago in forensics, there was a hypothesis that there were individuals who were called secretors and individuals who were non-secretors.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
it turns out that that particular designation has no basis in science. It was junk, and we can ignore
I
it.
agree, Terry.
But that idea has promulgated because that's what people wrote and that's what people thought for many years. And so I think some of that incorrect thinking is still out there in terms of shedder versus non-shedder and who would be first and did they leave more behind. And the answer is nothing to it. A identical vehicle was obtained and an identical key was obtained to try and reproduce what the state
This
came
isn't
up
an
with
identical
in terms of the
vehicle, is it?
amount of the
Because
DNA
the car that
was
Kathleen
recovered.
has never looks green ever.
Ms.
Always
Zellner
looks
went
blue.
up to Mr. Avery's prison and was able to bring in a key and have Mr. Avery hold a key, and that was timed for 12 minutes. So we can measure how much DNA we got from the same kind of key held for what we'd imagine is the same amount of time by the same person. The state got 0.17 nanograms per microliter. The amount of DNA that we recovered from the exemplar key is a tenth or so of the amount of DNA that the Wisconsin lab obtained from
Totally
their
agree with you, Kat.
Not half, not 80%, but a tenth.
Right, Bryce. It's
Why
the color is
did we
different, then it's
recover
not
so
identical.
much less? maybe we weren't as efficient, or
So I don't like when somebody, you're all about
had
the
some other
evidence and all
history
these things and
than
saying an
simply being
identical
held
vehicle. It's
by
not
Mr.
identical if
Avery.
it's a different color. I
Mr.
guess I'm going to be
Ewing, I believe it
the
was,
grammar
had
police
the
on that one.
imagination, let's call it, to suggest to you that maybe officers were taking a toothbrush and were kind of rubbing Mr. Avery's toothbrush on the key, and that's how the DNA got
I'm saying
on
they
the
don't have
key.
to rub anything on
Common
anything.
sense should tell you
She's
that
just
these
saying
kind
she
of
ran
motions,
tests and it came back
what
to
are
be
called
Steven.
furtive motions,
There doesn't
or,
have to be anything
for,
there.
lay people,
Bryce,
for
we're
people
fighting.
like you, it's called suspicious looking things, is something that you should probably discard.
I
Because
don't
if they
trust
take Mr.
anything that
Avery's
comes out of
toothbrush
Big Hair's
and start
lab.
rubbing it on the key, and then kind of hold it behind their back, that becomes almost cartoonish. That becomes something that is not at all
Don't judge a book by
plausible.
its cover.
Could you improve the item of evidence by rubbing it on a mouth swab, on a buccal swab, or with a toothbrush? And the answer is those would be great sources of DNA. You would get lots of DNA transferred simply and rapidly by rubbing an item of evidence against either one of those.
A recurring theme in the case, and something that's so suspicious and such a red flag, is that there are never mixtures on any of these items.
Amazon just pulled out front, so my dogs are going to start barking in a second.
So once
when they
again,
figure out they're there.
we can't duplicate what the state claimed happened, and we should have been able to duplicate that easily,
I don't either,
over
Maz.
and over and over again. So how could we have all of these scientific aberrations in one case?
February 14th, 2017, oral arguments in Chicago. So I attended this. Press is there before it's even daylight. And Kathleen and Doug were there. Hey!
Instead, Laura and I are going to present the wrongful convictions of the State Attorney General's office.
Good night, Terry.
Member to this
Next order of business is to find out who our panel is. I think it could be the game changer.
Wiegert is there. I'm sorry, man. And there's the Hallbach family. Just the two cousin brothers, the daddy, uncle, and the mother. And Wiegert is there to shake their hands and hug the mom. And here comes Kratz and his daughter's sister bride.
Good morning to you,
Rachel. Yes, we are here.
I was like 2 or 3 people behind Kratz and his daughter bride in line to get into the courtroom.
The big question is, will Dassey's conviction remain overturned?
And there's allegedly somebody I'm related to on this 3-person panel at the 7th Circuit.
Good morning, everyone.
Judge Rovner, who's
Good
talking
morning,
right
Mr.
now.
Burke.
Rovner is my biological father's last name.
chose to confess, to release those terrible images of Teresa
God.
Halbach that were haunting him. The investigators encouraged him to get it out, but did not apply any improper pressure.
Mr. Burke, help me with this. If a police officer says to someone who is being interrogated, let's get it all out today and this will be all over, what would the average person think this means? Would that person think, I can go home, it's done?
There's probably
Now,
in the
imagine,
files
it is
here,
not an average person, but a 16-year-old
where I uploaded the
with a
articles
very,
I
very
wrote
low
for the
IQ,
things that I
who
attended.
is extremely suggestible.
I think neither an average person
Absolutely,
nor Dassey
Maz.
would interpret that
If
statement
Stephen
as
gets
meaning that
any
he could go home.
kind of evidentiary hearing, new trial,
20 such
released,
statements,
whatever, I'm
30
going.
such
I don't care who in the
Nothing
Avery
the
family
investigators
likes it
said
or doesn't.
actually promised a
I will be
specific
there.
benefit in exchange for cooperation.
Well, how did the investigators not act coercively when they clearly showed frustration
right.
when he resisted or disagreed with key details and then offered praise such as, now we believe you?
I mean, I think if you watch the video, they showed very little frustration or praise.
And I did
Yeah,
look
the
at
two
the tape,
women
and there
judges-
were times to me that they seemed to be frustrated with his answers and his resistance.
Their main concern was the truth. The main message that they sent to Dassey was, be honest, tell the truth, don't make
Be
anything up.
honest.
It seems to me that it only takes one incident of planting information to taint a confession. You know, who shot her in the head? You think that's all right?
Obviously, it's preferable for the suspects to come out with it on their own, but it's not always possible. And it makes a lot of sense why Dassey couldn't think about that fact.
Oh, I'm
at that
absolutely
moment.
going in,
The
Marie.
conversation that they
Doesn't
were
mean I'll
having
get
was
in
about
because
what
it's
happened in the
limited
bedroom.
seating.
The investigators
Also,
didn't find out
depending where
until
we
later
are in
that she
COVID,
was shot in the garage. So
and
when they
what the
started
seating
asking
will
about
be,
the
but I
head,
will
Dassey
try.
couldn't think of the shooting because his mind was on the bedroom where all of the other things happened.
And there'll be
So I want
tons
to
of
ask
other
you,
people
you
who
agree
will be
that
trying
age
to
is
do
a
the same
relevant
thing.
factor in determining whether a confession is voluntary?
I do, but the
And the Supreme Court said that juvenile confessions must
With
be
Melissa
evaluated with special care.
Kaljuzinski,
So I want to know exactly
I get
where
to
the
sit with the
Wisconsin
family,
Appellate Court
so
decision considers
I get
Dassey's
reserved
age
seating
and where it
and I
was
don't
given
have to worry
special
about
care.
that. But
Dassey's age is
with
listed in
this
the
one,
opinion.
not so
It's
much.
listed, but in special care is more than just listing, don't you think?
It said it was basing its opinion on the trial court's decision, and the trial court's decision spent a lot of time on age. So I think on habeas especially, you can't assume that the Wisconsin Court of Appeals did not consider age.
What's oh, I'm sorry.
During the videotaped confession, Mr. Dassey comes out with a lot of details that he supplies. The opposing side has explained that as details that have been
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to
There's a few
see
minor points. So
Kathleen
there's a
get to
few facts
question
that we
Kratz.
know had been released by the police officers, but the vast majority of them had not.
But was there physical evidence of a rape or of a wound to the throat?
No, because the body was totally destroyed.
So those come only from Dassey's confession.
That's right. Yes.
And would not have been publicized ahead of time.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Now, obviously, there were vague promises of leniency, right?
I think there weren't even implied promises.
There were
Even
other
if there
times
were,
that
there were
Brendan
specific
was
warnings
interrogated that they
contradicted any
did not
implications.
record.
But let me just reiterate, we're on habeas review, right? So you're going to have factors that cut in different directions in every case. And where that's true, reasonable minds can certainly differ. Reasonable minds could
Dream
definitely
killer
conclude
Ryan
that
Ferguson
Dassey's
case,
confession
a
was
man is
voluntary.
murdered, and
He was Mirandized, even though he didn't have to be. He was interviewed for
couple
only 3
years
hours in
after
the
the
middle of the
murder,
day. He was offered food
says
and breaks.
he had a
Both his
dream
mother
that he and
consented
his
to the
friend
interview.
Ryan
He signed
Ferguson
Miranda waiver.
murdered
He
that
resisted the
guy.
officers multiple times. There's just no evidence that his will was overborne. If anything, there's evidence to the contrary. And all of the precedent supports the state here. It doesn't support Dassey.
Okay. Miss Ryder?
16-year-old mentally limited Brendan Dassey confessed in reliance on a false promise of leniency. That promise
Absolutely,
was,
Natalie.
quote, you're scared that you might get arrested, but, quote,
Night
I'm
Rider
thinking
does
you're
that a
all
lot,
right, okay?
and so
You
the
don't have to
sketch
worry
that's
about
up there right
things.
now is her
They
doing
told him this was true even if he gave, quote, statements against your own interest that make you look more involved.
I want to ask you, were the investigators aware of his intellectual or emotional limitations, and if not, was that necessary?
I don't know whether they knew his precise IQ score, but it's not important here whether they knew. The question of voluntariness is not a referendum on the state of mind of the officers. The question is what message was sent to Brendan Dassey, and did it overbear his will?
Number
Look, I've watched the whole thing. I don't
to
see Will
be
being
able to tell in a
overborne.
conversation with him that
what was the
he's got a
source
low intellect.
of the confession to cutting Miss Halbach's throat after raping her?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
It's not new. It's not news sources, is it?
No, Your Honor.
So it's either Dassey's memory or his imagination.
It's not in the media. You're correct. It's either his memory or his imagination. And it's that sequence in which the interrogators are trying to get him to say.
Well, it's clear he's been very resistant up to that point. He's telling
He had no
a
clue,
contradictory
Anne-Marie.
story that
He
doesn't
does
make
not
any
know
sense. And they're
what
calling him.
Miranda rights are.
It comes out very slowly and painfully, but he volunteers it.
Your Honor, I would respectfully disagree.
Okay.
Every step.
They're both
that-
in the
of that
70s,
confession,
Maz.
Every primary plot point
But
is
one,
a result of
Brendan was
suggestion.
like
Now, it's true that after the
73,
interrogators
and Stephen
introduced the
is
plot point,
70.
they allow
I
Brendan
think, but
to
remember me
embellish.
in numbers.
Like what? You went inside,
You went inside the house? Yes.
and then you're holding them responsible for all the details that come after that.
I'm not holding them responsible, Your Honor, but I'm pointing out that what happened was they used false promises of leniency combined with fact feeding at every crucial step of the story.
What's the fact feeding? I guess
I didn't
I'm
like this
having
guy.
trouble with that in the early stages of the interview.
Absolutely. I think you went over to Stephen Avery's house at Separate Appendix 54. You went back in that room, Separate Appendix 61. Does he ask you to rape Halbach, Separate Appendix at 60? You were there when she died, Separate Appendix 67. After they give him each step, they allow him to try to tell a story on his own. And what does he do in those moments? He provides information that is provably untrue.
Is there any physical evidence at all that ties Dassey to the murder?
No, Your Honor, there is nothing that did not come from the fact feeding that occurred during this interrogation. I expect you'll hear the state suggest that he led them to a bullet in the garage. That's not the case. Brendan has the shooting at first happening outside by the bonfire pit. And the officers say to him, because they know, they've found
It
10
should have been
shell casings in
Risen
that
or
garage already.
Dvorak.
They say to him, no, Brendan, we know some things happened in that garage. We need to get the honesty about the garage.
But I
That's
did
when
have
he
full
moves
faith in
the
Night
murder
Rider for
into
this.
the garage.
I really
Then
did.
they research
And
the garage and discover this bullet. That corroborates not Brendan Dassey's account, but the interrogator's account.
Thank you. Mr. Burke, would you please give Mr. Burke 3 more minutes?
And I also thought the state guy,
The details
this Luke
that
Berg
Dassey
guy,
provided
I
that
thought
are
he
most telling
sucked hard.
are his memories of Teresa. He remembers her screaming, "Help me," and seeing her naked and chained up to the bed. He remembers her crying and pleading with him to stop while he raped her. He remembers
Right,
her
Natalie,
breathing
that's what I'm
after
saying.
Avery
There's-
stabbed her in
he
the
was
stomach,
interviewed
and that she
multiple
still struggled
times,
to breathe
not always
after he
recorded.
cut her throat.
So what was
He
said
remembers
at
that her
those?
belly wasn't moving as they carried her out to the garage, and he remembers the awful smell as her body burned. None of those memories were planted. They were raw and real.
They were
Dassey
guessing.
wanted to get them out, and he did so voluntarily.
And
I would ask this court to reverse
guessing
the
is
district
not
court's
confessing.
unprecedented order.
The federal court is a sanctuary of sorts, a place where generally the best lawyers practice, the arguments that are made are elevated. It's a very dignified place. And I think when the arguments were happening in court, it was at a very high level and it respected the process. And then we came downstairs and there was all this commotion. And I went over and walked over to see what was happening.
Kratz walked right over
And
there.
Ken Kratz was holding a press conference.
I was standing downstairs at
My
that
name's
time.
Ken Kratz. I'm the former special prosecutor in the Brendan Dassey case. I am hopeful on behalf of the state that this decision
All the real lawyers walk out.
what it is that the
Don't
state
go for
courts
this whole show
of
here.
Wisconsin have consistently held
But
in this
Sweaty
case
Sweat
that there
goes
was
right up to the
no
microphone to
improper
talk.
influence, no coercion.
If he wants to hold a press conference, we all know about his press conferences. If he wants to do that, do it on his turf. Don't come into the federal district court and the federal appellate court in Chicago and soil the process.
Kratz, K-R-A-T-Z.
And tell us again your title.
Former Calumet County DA. I was
See,
the
this is mostly
prosecutor in both
Chicago
the
press that was
Stephen
here.
Avery case and the Brendan Dassey case.
And your friend, can you tell us
So
about
right
the book
behind
that you
Kratz there, that,
have?
I know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do. We're not going to talk about that today.
I know
though.
all
Today,
these
I think,
different
is
people.
and has to
Because
be
they're all our local
focused
Chicago
on
news
this
people.
really, really important case. We'll have a lot of time to talk about
WGN,
all those kind of things later.
that's NBC,
If the conviction is overturned and they
Channel
try to
2,
do a retrial without a
Fox.
confession, do they have much of a case against Brendan Dassey?
But this thing goes
CBS,
back
sorry,
to
not
trial.
Channel, I shouldn't say
Let's
Channel
not
2.
forget or kid ourselves that the state's not going to have lots of opportunity to make their points in this case.
And now here he is schmoozing with all the Wisconsin press that showed up at this one. 3 days after oral arguments in Brendan's case, co-lead investigator Tom Fossbender and Ken Kratz appear on Dateline.
You've really stayed silent through this firestorm. Why are you sitting here today?
Finally realized that someone needed to speak out, to bring forward the truth of what happened.
Why don't you just have a seat, Brendan?
This was seen by many as a false confession. Do you see it as a false confession or a real confession?
I feel it's a real
He
confession.
is Cat.
Fassbender resists charges that he and his partner inappropriately planted ideas in Dassey's head. Like in that exchange about the hood latch.
What did he do under the hood if that's what he did?
What did he do under the
What did
hood if
Brendan
that's
say?
what he did?
He agreed
Do you think
that,
Brendan would have ever
Stephen had
said
gone under
something
that.
happened
You
under
used
the
the word
hood if
agreed.
not for that?
Yes.
So you brought it up first.
Yeah, I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the areas that you came under fire for.
Yes.
Is that you were planting things in his mind.
Yes, that's what they said.
And that's what you did.
And there were instances that we did ask him specifically about things, yes.
What about his IQ? Because when you watch him, you can tell that he has a lower IQ.
I don't I don't assess IQs. I mean, I'm not,
But could you tell that he maybe wasn't like other boys his age?
more socially, probably. You know, I don't know across the IQ social line, but he could think. And he knew right from wrong.
We speak with former prosecutor Ken Kratz, who's written a new book which reveals his provocative theory that Stephen Avery made himself a murderer.
Stephen Avery started planning this event on the very first day he went to prison.
Kratz tells Dateline he believes Stephen Avery had set his sights on Teresa Halbach in the weeks leading up to her murder.
As we move closer towards October 31st, we see Stephen's behavior changing.
Please nobody buy his stupid book. In the videos
starts
here,
making calls
I
directly
read the entire
Teresa
book
Halbach
in
rather than going through
on
Auto Trader.
live here. So
why would Stephen Avery do
hear
this
me
when he
read it
was
to you
on the verge
instead
of
giving
getting this
this
big windfall,
smurf
potentially
bag
millions
any
of
money?
dollars?
That's a great question. You know, I don't know. We know that
Yeah, right,
he's a
Maz.
psychopath. We know that he has.
Do we know that?
But I let's say I allege that. Okay, I believe that deep down.
there was a different battery in the car, Lisa.
You bring previous
One that would
allegations of
be
sexual
used
assault
in a
and
police
rape,
car,
which were
not
prosecuted.
one for the RAV.
This seems to have really been a personal case for you, at least became a personal case for you. Looking back, do you think you could have approached this from a more professional standpoint as opposed to not characterizing Stephen in certain ways that you have?
I didn't buy the book either. It was provided to me online.
That I made well after the fact, after
so
he was
I was able to
convicted.
just read it online
I thought
to you all.
that he was a bad guy in the sense of he certainly had violence against women, histories. He had injured just about everybody that he was ever in a relationship with. And so the characterization at the time, knowing that he was violent, that doesn't make him a
he's
murderer,
ever been in a
of course,
relationship with.
but it isn't too far of a characterization
It's not going to be that many.
determination of what I
You
think
had him
he
in
is
prison
now,
most of his life.
which I would suggest was a psychopath.
I think that it's really unprecedented.
Because Lisa
that
allegedly
Mr. Kratz in 2017 is still on some type of active
battery
character assassination.
wasn't working. And in order to move the car to have it running,
He's
they had
talking
to
about
put a
crimes that
different
he wishes
battery
Stephen
in.
Avery had been charged and convicted of, but he wasn't. And I think it is going to come back to haunt him, because I think
And
he's
then forgot
crossed
to swap
over
it
from
back
what
out.
would just be regarded. It was certainly gone from being just an incredibly bad taste to, you know, doing things that are unethical under the canon of ethics.
Absolutely, Anne-Marie.
To now
Nothing will stop me from advocating
Mr. Avery's
that
efforts
Stephen is
to
innocent.
have a court
Not even
examine
Stephen.
constitutional violations.
Who gets told lies about me
he's
and
like a
then
moth
doesn't
to
like
the
me.
flame.
I'm still here
And he
advocating
just
for his
cannot
innocence.
stay away from the case. And the more he talks, the more ammunition he's giving us, because he's made so many statements that are just false.
Are you afraid of Kathleen Zellner?
No, I'm not involved in the case anymore. I shouldn't be afraid of anything.
You can't be
My
involved in the case
involvement,
anymore because you're a raper.
She could,
and you can't
she
practice
could
law.
unravel your work if what she's saying has some weight to it. You don't think she has a chance?
I don't.
There's Kathleen's office.
When you look at a prosecutor's duty of silence and
It's on
how
Butterfield
prosecutors
Road
are
in
supposed to act
Naperville,
with regard to past
right next to
convictions, they have to be very
355.
careful. So if they are talking openly about a
Thank you,
case,
Anne-Marie.
what is their purpose? Here we have someone talking about a past conviction who
This
isn't
is
a
Doug
prosecutor
talking,
anymore
Kathleen's partner.
and is writing a book. And that does not seem to be a necessary and legitimate interest that could cause one to go out and talk about a past conviction. And there does seem to be some precedent for if the violations of the canons of ethics or what a prosecutor is supposed to do. They're so egregious that one
Absolutely,
possibly
Bryce.
could bring that as a claim on its own.
And he was all over press and social media, you know, spewing his crap.
Looking back, were there certain things you would have done differently in this case, knowing now what you do?
Yeah, certainly. The one big thing I would have done is not give a press conference on the 2nd of March after Brendan made his statement and after he was charged. I provided that information
He's
that was
like
in the criminal
Carla. He
complaint.
never met a camera he didn't
orally.
like.
I could have and should have just released the complaint, let all the reporters repeat the facts. I didn't have to do that, and obviously, if I had to do it all over again, I was trying to keep more information out of the public. It sounds a little bit unusual, but there were so many horrific facts in this case that I thought by providing the soundbite myself,
Horrific
by
facts?
providing
Name
the
one.
soundbite, I could lessen the impact on the
one
family
fact.
and on the community. I was resoundingly criticized for it. I see why.
I can.
But I
Stephen's
made that
innocent.
decision.
Fact.
It was a conscious decision that I made to do that again. I would have done it differently.
In his book, Ken Kratz writes that the statements he made in his March 2, 2006 press conference were permissible under the rules of attorney professional conduct. No, they weren't.
6 months ago, after the Lynn thing had heated up, Stephen was very upset about just about everything. He was angry, he was nervous, he was overwhelmed, and this is when Stephen decided to take me off the visiting list. He was still calling me. we didn't fight anymore. But I ended up crying my eyes out.
He doesn't have the case file.
We have been good now for months. We're past all that mess that went on last summer and into the fall. We're friends, and that's what it is.
Took her off his visitors list.
Oh, just sitting
But
here
yet
doing
she
a
was
lot of
still
nothing.
going to the prison visiting a pedophile that she posted on Facebook she was now engaged to.
Yeah, well,
Or visit.
has your mom and dad been there? Or your mom anyway?
No.
She hasn't.
Can't walk.
I know. Last time I was with her, I thought, boy, I don't know how she can make it in the prison like that.
Yeah.
Time is coming. She won't have to do it.
Yeah.
Kathleen, work faster.
Yeah, Bryce.
Kathleen is doing an
Kratz
absolute
reached
wonderful
out to
job.
Steven.
I don't think she could do any
Wrote
better.
him a
In fact,
letter.
she's
He
even better than
really
we thought she
wanted
was.
Steven to
I
tell
mean,
him his story.
She leaves no stone unturned, and I love it.
And
but I'm sure that the state isn't going to lie down and die. They're going to fight just like what's happened with Brendan.
Played with Kratz a little bit to see
In
where
the
he's
end,
going to go with it.
Kathleen's going to win.
Steven
I
outsmarted him.
swear she is. But when is another
Believe it
story.
or
I
not.
think it's going to take a lot longer than what Steven thinks.
Earl out there, he's helping the most, you know, with Mom and Dad. So that puts a little pressure off of me.
You're only supposed to take half of your insulin.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's the only thing.
No pill?
Well, yeah, you gotta take your pills.
Got to.
Huh?
Read that on there.
Yeah, I told Earl, I said, you're responsible. You help them, give them what they need. You know, make sure Mom's got her pills and all that ass.
This one you gotta take a third.
Her shots.
The other one, you gotta take a 6.
Dolores is scheduled to have a medical procedure to improve the circulation in her legs. If all goes well, she will be able to have knee replacement.
Same day surgery, ain't it? Or do you get to stay there tonight?
Huh?
You don't get to stay there tonight, do you?
I hope not.
Oh, you don't know?
6 hours I think I'm supposed to stay there.
Yeah.
Before I can walk.
And what'd they tell you? Did they say they were gonna just clean the veins out? Or they were gonna put plastic veins in?
Just clean them out, I think.
Oh.
So they're opened up.
Huh?
So they're opened up, I think.
Change them. Well, you can walk.
Sorry, Jeff was just here picking up the Amazon stuff out front, so that got the dogs barking again. Dolores spends 9 hours at the hospital before returning home.
You take everything now tonight, all the same as normal.
Do I have to take these at
You
night?
gotta take your 8 for supper.
Oh, my 8 out of this one.
No?
But you must have filled that up.
What's this?
Well, the Amazon stuff he needed for
didn't take
work,
last night's
so he
pills?
drove home to
I
get
don't
it,
know,
and now
right?
he's going back to work.
It was Wednesday yesterday.
Yeah, well, you didn't take yours last night.
He wanted me to drop it off at his work, but I'm like, I'm live, I can't.
Don't take them again now. But leave them in there then. I don't want to come back on next week and they'll be gone.
I want it is then.
Yeah. Yeah, tonight you take Thursday. It's Thursday today.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she's losing it.
Oh.
You know, I mean, her memory and everything. And Stevie's got a lot to do with it. You know. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I wish something would happen pretty quick.
See, it's been known for some time that she
That's all I
had
can say on
dementia.
that deal, you know. And Brendan's mother, Barbara, she's gone through hell. She looked just like her mother. That's not easy for Barbara.
Oh, I'm sure he will. He's read it. He's read part 1 anyway. Somebody
The defendant tells
transcribed
us
it
that Stephen
and
Avery
sent
opened the hood
mailed
of
it
that
to him.
vehicle. How do we know? Well, based on that statement on March 1st, they swabbed the hood and obtained a DNA profile on that hood. A DNA profile of Stephen Avery. Only the killer and his accomplice would know that, to look there, because law enforcement had not looked there before. And not until he told them to is when they found this. Council will make a big deal out about, well, they suggested to him they went under a hood. Well,
They did.
Let's take their argument at face value. My response is, so what? They went and they swabbed the hood, and geez, guess what? Stephen Avery's DNA is on that hood.
You suggest it,
I
then test
requested in the
it,
motion
get him
for
to say
scientific
it,
testing that we be
then
allowed
test
to do
it, and
source
allegedly
testing
Stephen is there.
that was developed
Oh,
at
yeah, Mass, he
Dr.
did. He
Wright's
licked it.
laboratory. So we picked up the hood latch swab from the Attorney General, and then Dr. Wright did that testing at his laboratory.
In the forensic world, there's only 4 body fluids. We can test for blood, saliva, semen, or urine. And so
Something
we made
Stephen
an
says
extract
all the time.
from the
You got that
fraction of
right.
the swab we were
So I'm
provided,
sure when he
and
watches
did
things,
4
he'll be
individual
saying that.
tests,
You got that
and
right.
all of those tests were negative.
The saliva test was negative. It's not saliva that was put on the hood latch.
So that it's not a toothbrush.
So then I wanted to do microtrace testing. When it was tested by a microtrace chemist, he confirmed that it was completely dissimilar to hood latch swabs that he gathered for purposes of comparison. His sample that was actually taken from a hood latch of a car of similar vintage, there were dark marks on it, and there was absolutely nothing like that on the Avery hood latch swab.
Because it was cleaned.
After you have hypothesized that maybe an item of evidence has been improved or manipulated, the question is, how is that done? And we've discussed how you can physically do it, but another way is to relabel an existing item.
Relabel existing items.
So from the unknown
So
parts
does it
of
come
the
from the
case,
hood latch
they're gonna
at
get
all?
profiles. Whose profile is it? So you need to get a standard, you need a reference. And so there are reference standards from the defendant. And then there's the actual evidence samples from the crime scene. most of the samples are swabs. Suppose in a case that one of the reference swabs doesn't make it into the proper envelope. And now you relabel that swab, evidence number 4. So now you've identified
It can't
the
be
defendant
DNA particles
on an item
from
of evidence
sweat.
by simply
It would be
changing the
DNA
name
particles
on the swab. You haven't
that is
physically
transferred by
manipulated
sweat.
anything,
There's
you
no
just
DNA
changed the
in
name.
sweat.
That's very simple to do. Now you have to have the extra item. You have to lose it in the system.
So your
But
skin
that
cells
happens
can
in
come
cases.
off with
So we
sweat.
started
so
looking
you
for other
leave a
swabs
sweaty handprint
that might
somewhere,
have
but
been
it's your skin
substituted for the
flakes
hood
that
light
have gone,
swabs.
that
And
the
lo and
sweat
behold,
transferred
we
there.
found that when Stephen Avery was first taken into custody, he was taken to a hospital and swabs were gathered from his body. 2 groin swabs were taken from Stephen Avery. Wiegert and Fassbender had a search warrant.
Why would you be taking
The
groin
nurse
swabs?
took the groin swabs, and then one of them said, oh, the warrant doesn't call for us to take groin swabs. And they documented that the nurse threw them into a receptacle. The nurse, though, did not document that they'd been taken. So immediately you know something's wrong.
Thank you, Maz.
I think that they kept the swabs. So I wanted to investigate the chain of custody on the so-called hood latch swab that was given to the crime lab.
April
The
3rd
officers
is
that
when they
photographed
swabbed the
and
hood
swabbed
latch.
the hood latch, Tyson and Hawkins, did not turn the swab over to the crime lab. Wiegert did. But when Wiegert turned it over, in the custody transmittal sheet, he signed Hawkins' name. There may be 2
What's up
other
with that?
investigators, Hawkins, Tyson, that photographed and swabbed the hood latch, but I don't believe that swab ever made its way to the Wisconsin crime lab. I think Wiegert substituted the groin swab. And then that swab would have a robust amount of DNA on it. Of course, it never touched a hood latch. It never was in the vicinity of the RAV4. They just renamed the swab.
I also recall, because Steven's car was there, that they were going through as well when they had it in the garage. And wasn't it said that the lab tech had been searching in Steven's car, and then he went to the RAV and never
Who's on
switched his
there?
gloves, and he transferred then some of Steven's
Are you
DNA
kidding?
from one
What were they
vehicle to the
saying?
other?
And they were talking about.
Oh,
the phone
absolutely,
calls to
Rebecca.
Barbara. They were talking about the bullet.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It was just the 2 of them, though, right? Buting wasn't on there?
No, just them 2.
Okay. So yesterday I was talking to a really famous FBI profiler.
Yeah. Somebody
who's been right about a lot of cases that other people couldn't solve. So he gave me a lot of information about who could have committed the murder and how we can get that person identified by getting people around them to help us. So it was like very good techniques and stuff to use.
That's good.
Yeah, so I thought that was really useful. But other than that, we've got everything drafted. We're just going back to editing and kind of restructuring. Let me see. I'm just flipping through the petition. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. Why don't you, if you can call me back on Friday, I'm going to have some more questions, okay?
Yeah.
So why don't you give me a call back then?
Yeah, when I get my break, I can do that.
Yeah, because I'll be here. Okay, well, everything looks really good.
Stephen was working at this time. That's why he said when he gets his break.
Definitely. Well, we know it's not you, right?
Yeah.
So, he already knew that, so now we just have to get you out of there. Okay, well, have a good day. I'll look forward to talking to you on Friday. Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Kathleen's investigator, Steve Kirby, went to meet with Scott Blodorn, who was Teresa Halbach's roommate at the time of her disappearance. I feel Blodorn is somebody they could get to crack.
We got there today at 7:30, but I didn't want to knock on his door at 7:30. I wanted to see if there was any activity, and it was about 8:20. When his wife came to the door, she said, "Didn't he tell you he didn't want to talk to you?" And I said, "Yes, but I have something that's very important that he needs to hear." And then she went and got him, and he came out. And it was a little bit standoffish, but not, like I say, he's not confrontational.
Does he seem nervous?
Yeah, he does seem nervous. He seems shook. And he mentioned the other guy's name like right away. That felt was interesting. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
What context did he mention it in? Like
when I said we're going to be naming a couple of people as alternative persons of interest is how I phrased it, and he said, "Oh, well," then he mentioned his name. So
interesting.
Yeah. I said this isn't going to go away. So they're going to be filing these papers, and it's going to be a part of the public record, and you really ought to. I said, just as much as if the police came to talk to you and you told them you didn't want to talk to them, you have that right. You have the right not to talk to us. But then, we have to do what we have to
Rebecca?
do. Then he said that he was going up to visit his parents. And then I said, well, what about Monday? And he said, what time? He goes, anytime after 6. I said, I'll be here at 6.
Here's what doesn't make sense in what Blodorn's saying. He's saying that she's never gone overnight. And yet she's gone for 3 nights.
3 days, and yeah, I've got that in
and
there. I've got questions about regarding that. Why he didn't call? Why did anybody call him? Did he worry about her? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I got 11 pages of notes to talk to him about, so it's going to be a thorough interview. If he sits for it, it's going to be an hour and a half interview at least.
What do we do if he calls back and says, "I don't want to talk to you"?
I'm going to tell him that I'm sorry to hear you say that. This isn't going away. You can either talk to me now, or you're going to eventually be on the stand, taking and answering these questions under oath. And again, I have no control over how this gets out into the public.
One thing I'd like you to tell him is that we start out with a list of probably, I would say, 5 suspects.
Yeah, just talk to
potential
Kathleen and clear
suspects under the
yourself.
Denny standard. We've gone to them and the people that were forthcoming answering questions, and we thought the answers fit the evidence that we have, that we did remove them. We're not naming them in the petition, but to me, it's a big red flag if somebody won't sit down and talk.
That's actually what I told him this morning. I said, look, we want to be fair to you. And
yeah, exactly. Because once he explains these things that haven't ever been answered, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because I don't want to name somebody that we can't meet that standard.
Right, Kat? And if he is part of something shady, could make a freaking deal. First one who talks gets the deal. On Monday, Kathleen's investigator reports back to her that after consulting with a lawyer, Scott decided to cancel their scheduled interview.
We had to get rid of about 400 cars to make things go here, to pay the telephone bill, to pay the electricity bill.
Yeah, y'all have summer homes.
This is the stuff that we
Have
got off of
vacation
them
homes.
in a quick hurry. The die cast and the aluminum and the wiring and the brass, the copper.
Why don't you
we
sell
can, sell some of that stuff.
Crivets
But if we run
homes
out of
and all
money
your
that
toys.
we had with the cars and that, then we got something to back us up a little bit anyway. When that's all taken care of. We got a truck down right now with a transmission out of it. We can't afford to put a transmission in
They're
it.
so lying about
We
how
can't afford to
how they
change the
are
oil in the
financially.
loader because we don't got money to change the oil in the loader. And we're 400 hours over the due date on that already. Yeah, that's really stressful, My dad worries about all of that. He'd like to keep it going, because him and my grandpa started this, from nothing.
I forgot when I was taken. Let me see one.
It's a place where the mob would hide
But there
stuff.
was a road on the back when I was
That's-
taken. Well, this is Stevens' picture. Well, that's like a 40 acres, see?
So many
Goes all the way down
mobsters
and
from
comes back
Chicago
over this way. And along here.
hid things in Wisconsin.
They ain't got it quite
And
all on
Avery's
it. Come
Auto
back over
Salvage
this way
was
more.
started as a place to
Well, it started
hide
in
stuff for the mob.
1965. Now my first record was
Vehicles involved in crimes.
59 or 1960 Ford four-wheel drive, you know. There's a crank on the side. But it worked. We hauled in quite a few cars back then. 350 or 370 in 1 week. That's moving. I know. Dolores would steer one, and I'd take one with the
Look
record.
at that picture of
Sometimes we come in
Dolores.
like with 5 cars at one time, all day long, and until we couldn't, you know. A lot of old Buicks.
I learned that from Kim Ducat.
Yeah.
She told me about the whole mob thing. I didn't know that before
big
that.
junkyard, big salvage yard. I remember when Dad got that accident, 74, I think it was. His truck
Oh, wow,
was broken,
Patricia.
and he looked at Hamilton's. Earl was too young, you know. So I said, well, I quit school and run the business till he gets better. So that's what I did. You know, we had to put food on the table. Mom would help me a little bit and do the paperwork. It went all right. I don't think I ever remember when it was real small. The whole yard was full. You couldn't put no more in there hardly. Because that one year we crushed 3,049 cars. You know, and I barely made a dent in there at that time.
When Steve got out the first time, then business was going good. I mean, we had customers after customers here. I mean, we were doing really good. But then when the stuff happened now, this time, it took a toll on us.
I wonder if it has anything to do with Chuck and Earl and their creepiness with female customers.
He keeps on telling me it'll get better.
No, I haven't heard
You
from
know, it's
Kim.
been, what, 12 years now?
I had messaged
They got
her
worse.
after her son died,
No.
my condolences, and she said thank you, and I haven't heard
Other
since.
than that, I don't know. I think pretty soon what's going to hurt us is we're going to run out of vehicles
Oh,
to get
that's
rid of.
funny, Patricia.
And then, you know, in the long run, we probably will go out of business, you know, if it don't get better. You know? You know?
So that's the end of episode 6. Let me get exited out. Tomorrow, it's showing already. It starts with Brendan's interview there. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central, we'll start and do episodes 7 and 8. We'll see if you see me. I am in episode 7. My back is. And now it is almost, what time is it exactly? 3:13. So Kayla versus Steven is scheduled to start in 15 minutes. So as soon as we know anything on that, we'll get that posted. I don't know, and if I have anything, if I get the paperwork on it, but I have a phone call scheduled for around 4 o'clock, and then also I have a Zoom thing I'm supposed to do at 5 o'clock. So I don't know if I would do a live today on whatever happens with Kayla. Patricia, I'm there because I was at the 7th Circuit. So, as the camera was, and I was talking to Stephen Drizzen at that time, that when the camera was panning, you see me, it's literally a couple seconds, and the first time I saw it, I didn't even, the first time I saw part 2, I didn't even know I was in there. One of the moderators told me I was. So, I made that shirt, yeah. Yeah, so Kayla filed against Stephen for harassment and wants a restraining order. So that hearing is supposed to, court starts at 3:30, so it's in 15 minutes. So we'll see if anything gets posted on the website today or if we'll have to wait until the morning. So, all right, I am going to go because my dogs have been begging me to go OUT for the last hour. And we will talk again tomorrow. Investigation continues. Thank you, everybody, for joining.